Good evening, everyone. Respected Honorable Chief Guest, our esteemed speakers, and all the valuable participants. This is Nandini Day. Welcomes you all in this beautiful evening. As we all know that in all countries around the world, the government is responding to COVID-19 pandemic by introducing measures such as social distancing, quarantine, and isolation. While necessary, these measures can have a significant effect on our emotional well-being. Fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, and grief are exaggerated by being a query from being away from school, work, peers, adjusting to new ways, as well as balancing work from home and responsibilities, and most of all, fear of losing job. While it is true that we may experience many strong and some unpleasant emotional responses to the current health situation, there are many things we can do to help ourselves feel safe and in control ourselves. In this evening, Professional Institute of Business Bangladesh presents you a platform where experts from different corners around the globe are here with us to join us, to make us feel wonderful and give us a valuable advice and tips to how to deal with their emotional well-being and coping strategies during COVID-19. I would request Dr. Khalid sir, as he is present with us, our chief guest, Dr. M.A. Khalid, Masters from Dhaka University, PhD from USA. He has wide-ranging background and bring us 38 years of experience on the table. He is a senior consultant psychologist practicing since 2000. He has joined as advisor in Star Gold Group of Company, Dubai, UAE. Currently, he has been associated with reputed university as faculty for MBA and EMBA program. I would like to request our chief guest, Dr. M.A. Khalid, to come over and give us an address note. Dr. Khalid, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Nandini. Can you hear me, Nandini?
Yes,
Is
sir,
it
you
clear
are
to you?
audible. You are
Matt,
clearly audible.
Can you hear me? I think they are muted already. Hello, hello everyone. Good evening here in Bangladesh. Mr. Matt Palestine, Chief Executive. I would like to convey my sincere thanks to Mr. Matt Palestine, Chief Executive Officer, EQ4 Worldwide Incorporated USA. Professor Dr. Stephen W. Oliver, University of Pennsylvania, USA. Dr. Shanti Jones, Certified Counselor, New Mexico, USA. Dr. C. Lee, Guarantee Certification in 6 Seconds, USA. Mrs. Gayatri Datto, Founder, Sisters Living Works Organization, India, from USA now. And honored participants, professionals, teachers, students, dignitaries. I would like to mention here that it could only be possible due to Mr. Matt Palestine for his hard work round the clock, along with Nandini Day, who also assisted and coordinated from time to time. Even I found them at 2 o'clock at night. 2 o'clock at night, Nandini is working with Matt. However, it could all now we it would be a great success for all of you, and we can contribute significant informations to our participants and other dignitaries. I would like to convey also my good wishes and blessings to Nandini Dev for her hard work round the clock. I would like to share few important issues. I know there is very senior professors, senior people, resource person. They will also deliver their valuable lectures, contribute for the society, and as well PPT, and present their topics also. I would like to share few tips, few things to all of you. Actually, emotional well-being refers to the emotional quality of an individual experience. Emotional well-being is influenced by a variety of demographic, economic, and situational factors. For example, the onset of COVID-19 outbreak lowered emotional well-being. The implication of decreased emotional well-being are related to mental health concerns such as stress, depression, anxiety. These in turn contribute to physical health concerns such as digestive disorder, sleep disturbance, and general lack of energy. The profile of a person prone to emotional distress is likely someone with low self-esteem, pessimistic, emotionally sensitive, very self-critical people who need to constantly assert themselves through their emotions. They also tend to timid, overly worried about the future and focus on the past. As Dr. Marisa Navarro says in her book La Medicina Emocional, no one is safe from suffering its emotional state. It is a very serious problem that can result in constant states of anger, sadness, worry, and even anxiety or depression. However, there is also where there is a problem, there is a solution. We have to cope this situation. An infectious illness outbreak such as COVID-19 can be stressful to you, your loved ones, and your friends. It is natural to feel overwhelmed, sad, anxious, and afraid. You may also experience other symptoms of distress, such as trouble sleeping. To reduce your steps and help manage the situation, we have to remain positive thoughts, positive belief, positive thinking, and remind yourself of your strength. Connect with friends, loved ones, families, and professionals as well from time to time. Go outside and get exercise. If you are not sick, remember to practice good hygiene and physical distancing. Walking, running, bicycling, and healthy activities that do not require close contact with others or safe equipment. Anyway, I will also share the preventive measures should be taken in all and every steps during the COVID. There is no excuse, no options. Identity what you are feeling, and usually healthy coping skills. Recognize feelings of loss and are normal, and there are ways to cope. Talk to professionals. So anyway, why there is a problem, there is a solution. We have to overcome this situation, and this situation will definitely overcome. Uh, uh, it become now gradually being controlled, and I think it will be 100% controlled in the forthcoming days. As we are all working, we should take preventive measures. We should not be emotionally aroused. We have to talk with the professionals. We have to talk with the friends. We have to talk with our loved ones. We have to uh, we have to limit some unnecessary news, only the essential ones. Anyway, I don't want to say too much because that other resource person also here. Nandini, I want to hand over to you for the next person. Okay, Miss Nandini. Hello.
Thank you so much, sir. Well said. When there is a problem, there is a solution. Thank you for your appreciation and your wise word. It means a lot. For as we have a problem, I would like to welcome Dr. I would like to welcome our honorable keynote speaker, Mr. Matt Perelstein, to give us a solution. Mr. Matt, also known as EQ Dude, as he has been immersed in teaching, studying, writing about, and practicing emotional intelligence for 30 years in the USA. He also runs a non-profit organization in USA called EQ for Peace. He believes that we can change the world from inside out. I repeat, it's inside out with emotional intelligence emotional intelligence by teaching how to manage our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. I welcome you today in this webinar. Mr. Matt, over to you. Mr. Matt, you're mute. You are mute
Thank you.
right now.
Okay. Thank you, Nandini. Thank you, Dr. Khalid. Nice to meet everybody. I see a lot of people are joining with the chat and saying hello. We appreciate that. So, and we appreciate that you are here to learn more about your inner world and about emotional intelligence. I assume that you know a little bit about it, or else you wouldn't be here. But we feel that all of us who are doing presentations and a lot of other people now are feeling like the emotional intelligence is kind of the answer to a lot of the problems. And there's a lot of problems these days, as you all know. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and be able to go through PowerPoint. Feel free to, I'm going to be asking you to stay involved. I'm asking you to, this emotional intelligence is very important, very critical to our development. So please sit a little bit forward in your chair, get involved with this, get involved with your life and join in. So this is important information. So emotional intelligence, as you probably know, is about being smart about your heart and not just your mind, but your heart and your body as well. Most of our schooling is about our mind, and that's all we focus on, but there's a lot more to it. We need to add our heart to it and add our body to it, because we get lots of very, very good information from all parts of us. It's not just our mind. It's not just cognitive. We're pretty good up here. We need to add our emotional side too. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we have some big goals for this presentation. We've got a couple hours to get involved with you guys. We want to engage you in managing your life and your loves. Emotional intelligence is also about love, and kind of boil it all down to that. We want to give you some hope and some coping skills, a lot of coping tools, sorry. A lot of people are feeling very down and hopeless, and things are, looking grim. So, but it's up to you. It's up to you to continue to keep yourself up and to keep your life going. So I'll go a lot more into that in my presentation, and others as well. I want to introduce you to the science. There's a science about emotions. There's an art to emotions, and there's kind of a magic to it. It's pretty amazing how adding our feelings and emotions into our life can affect us. And we want to give you the power to survive, but even more than that, to thrive. So if you would, in the chat, go ahead and put in there, what is your biggest feeling these days? If you're aware of your feelings, what is your biggest feeling these days? Just one or two words. What are you feeling right now? Go ahead and just put one or two words in there. Uncertainty, yeah. Confusion, stressful, yeah. Uncertainty, our brain does not like uncertainty. Our brains do not like uncertainty. They want to know what's going on. Even if it's bad news, I want to know what's going on, and we don't know what's going on, and it's very difficult for our brain. It doesn't work properly that way. Hopeless, yikes. Boredom, I'll bet. But hopeless actually is not actually a feeling. Technically, it's a thought. I think that there's no solution. So we're going to talk also about the difference between our thoughts and our feelings. Are very important that you distinguish between those two. The good news is you're in the right place. This is some great information, and I think you're going to find some good tools for how to progress better. The bad news is that people really are hurting in the world, emotionally and physically. I don't know the numbers for India and such, but I do know some of the numbers for the United States are not looking good. They're talking like something like 46%. They did a survey recently. 46% of the young adults have seriously considered suicide recently in the last month or two. 46%. That's unreal to me. That's just incredible how bad that is mental health wise. And so I hear that you guys are, lack of purpose, hopeless, bored, etc. And it's just, it's bad. And so what I want to get across is the good news is that EQ is here to save the day. That's how it feels. And it's but it's about you. You got to do it. It's not them. It's not the world. It's not the virus. It's not the government. It's not even being locked up, locked down. Sorry. It kind of feels like locked up, doesn't it? If you think about that, I was thinking about that the other day, that when we put people in jail, our worst people, we put them in jail, right? The worst of the worst, what do we do with them? We put them in solitary confinement, the worst of the worst. Guess what we've got now? We're put in solitary confinement, and a lot of us are stuck by lockdown. There is, and it's not funny. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. It's incredible how that can mess with us, but it's up to us to keep it going, to keep ourselves up, to keep ourselves going. So how hopeless would you say you feel now? Throw a number in the chat. We got 5, 6, 7, 2, yay. But yeah, 7's a lot. It's bad. So let's see if we can help you with that. So the very basics of EQ are just about me and other people, right? It's not just about me, but it is about me. It's a study of me, of you and me and we and us, all of that. To me, it's the most practical subject there is, because it's about me. It's all about me. And so, it's 24/7, 365, it's about me. And so it's about my awareness of myself, how I manage myself, then awareness of others, and how I manage my relationships with others. Pretty simple, really, but not easy. Sometimes it's real simple. This is not rocket science, but sometimes it's not easy at all. In fact, some of this emotional stuff is some of the hardest things you might ever do. So, but you can get through it. You can do it. You can manage things. You can deal with even your most negative feelings. And once you do, then you can do it, and you can do it from then on. And it gives you some hope, and it gives you the power to know that you're in charge of you, not all the stuff that's happening outside of us. So, and it all starts with awareness, and that's what you guys are here for. That's what we're here to help you with, is to be aware. First thing, we can't make logical decisions based on things we're not aware of, kind of like, oh, no kidding, but you got to be aware first. So let's do that. So if you study motivation and success, there's usually 3 different goals to that. First is making positive, engaging goals for you. This is very, very personal. What do you want? Who are you? What do you want to do? Make some goals for yourself. Second, take intentional steps toward your goals. And third is to build and maintain a powerful support system for yourself. So, do you guys have goals? Can you make goals? Will you make goals? Put in the chat, I have some goals. I'm making goals, something like that. Put in there. Tell yourself, this is about positive affirmations too. Tell yourself, we're going to get through this. So do you have goals? Put them in. You don't have to put what they are, but right in there. I do. I tell yourself that you are moving forward. What we're talking about is, yeah, there you go. All right, you guys. We're adding feelings to our thoughts. That's what I was talking about earlier. We're adding feelings to our thoughts. We have plenty of thoughts. Our school is about thoughts. We work on our cognitive side through school to get a job and all that good stuff, and that's great. What we're doing is adding the emotions to it. We're adding to it. So we're not taking anything away. We're just adding to it. And what happens is that a lot of people don't like their feelings, their negative feelings, and so they push them away and they avoid them and deny them and all that stuff. But they're good information. They're real, they're you and they're important. So feelings, we need to adjust our thinking that feelings are a good thing. The feelings are a good thing. In fact, it turns out research is showing that if, for happiness and for mental health, sanity, and success in life, you have to know what your feelings are and be able to balance your thoughts and your feelings. So how well do you do? How do you do that now? How well do you do that now? Let's go ahead and type in the chat if you would. 1 through 10. How well do you handle your feelings now? Uh-oh, somebody said they're very bad at managing feelings. I'm sorry. Well, let's learn some more about that. Some people are very good at it. As it turns out, if we're good at it, it's probably because we either figured it out on our own, or we were lucky enough to have either a really good parent or a mentor that helped us with that when we were younger, but we didn't learn it in school. And so we had to figure it out on ourselves. That's why our nonprofit is about putting EQ education into schools everywhere, because kids don't learn this stuff, and it's super important. I was a mess as a kid because I didn't have any idea how to handle my feelings. And it was ugly. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, I see. This is all about emotions. And then I figured out that nobody else knows how to do it either. So this is a fun graphic that talks about the different sides of our brain. Your brain is split into two. This is not, theoretically, it's a theoretical thing. It's not exactly how this works, but basically we have an analytical side that we focus on and emotional side that we don't. And we're going to switch that. We want to balance those out. So same thing. We want to use our mind and our heart. Everybody get along inside of us so we don't have commotion even inside of us, because we are in charge of ourselves. Here's the key to this whole thing, you guys. This is the key to this whole thing, is that you take into account that your thoughts and your feelings and your actions are yours. They are yours, right? When I figured that out, it was a life changer for me. No matter what happens outside of me, I have the power to control what happens inside of me. So can you take that leap? It's kind of a leap of faith, but if you don't do it, if you don't agree with this, you end up kind of being a whiner and a blamer and a victim, and that's no fun. So can you manage you? Can you take responsibility for who you are and what's happening inside of you, and know that you can get through this? Put in the chat, I manage me. Very, very, very important. I've done an awful lot of talks and videos and YouTubes, and in every single one of them, I say the same thing. We are 100% responsible for ourselves. It's not just narcissism, lead. It's not. I disagree. It's not. We're responsible for them, but it doesn't mean that I don't take into account everybody else, and it doesn't mean that I don't care. It just means that if I do care and I do responsible for me, then I choose to care because they're my thoughts and they're my feelings. And if I care, it's because I choose to care. So it is about me. It's about you, but it's about me. You know what I mean? So thoughts, feelings, and actions, 3 different things. There's only 3 things we need to take into account. But turns out that's all we really need. Our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. It's also called head, heart, hand. We think, we feel, we act, and our actions are based on our decisions, and our decisions are based on our thoughts and our feelings, every single one. So not just our thoughts, but our thoughts and our feelings. That's why I keep saying feelings are good. So feelings are good. Tell yourself feelings are a good thing. Some of the basic things that EQ is important to deal with are values, opinions, our relationships, our stress, our fears, our anxiety, our angers, our success, our peace, and our love. Some kind of important things, I think. That's why we jumping up and down about learning EQ. These are kind of relevant as far as I know. And I like this quote from Aristotle: educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. I kind of think that's a little bit extreme, but you get the point. You got to do both sides. There's 3 basic steps that we've come up with to deal with the EQ. And like I said earlier, awareness is always first. You got to first know what's happening inside of you, what's going on, how does EQ work, and being aware of other people. Awareness, open your eyes. Awareness is first, always the first step to change. So be aware. Second is acceptance. Like I said, accepting responsibility, accepting how things are, how they are, because they are how they are, especially in the world right now. And we can accept a lot of things as opposed to fighting them, denying them, avoiding them, that kind of thing. Just accept it. It only takes a second, but it's super critical to have an emotional intelligence. And the third is to decide intentionally and consciously that I'm going to take this action or I'm not going to take this action, right? I can take no action. Sometimes with strong emotions, it's good idea not to take any action at all. Just keep your mouth shut. But do it intentionally. Do it so that you are in charge of your life. If you're aware and you can accept what's happening, then you can take good conscious actions or not, and that's up to you. What we're shooting for, we believe that EQ can teach us inner peace. It can teach us interpersonal peace between 2 of us. It can teach us social peace between 3 or more of us in a group, a team, a family, a work environment, whatever. And we're hoping that eventually that will lead to global peace. Maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Put it in the chat if you agree, don't agree. It's not a short-term solution, but it definitely I think it's working, moving in that direction. A lot of people have judgments about their emotions. We say, oh, that's positive, that's negative, that we don't like those. Well, they're not that much fun, but we do still need to learn from all of them, even the negative ones. So what we found out is that if you can deal with your own fear, anger, and sadness, the 3 biggies, fear, anger, and sadness, if you can deal with those 3 as deep as you need to, then there just isn't that much that life can throw at you that you can't handle. That's pretty neat, I think. So if you learn about you and you're not afraid of you, then you can handle almost anything. We also want to talk just for a sec about complaining versus venting. This is kind of magical, one of those magical differences. Complaining is rant, 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 rant. I'm having this is blah, blah, blah. And you feel worse afterward. And the person you're talking to usually feels worse afterward. And complaining is it means I'm powerless. I can't deal with it. It's awful. But the other side, very close to that, is venting. And venting is about releasing the feelings. It's taking responsibility, like I said, being aware of, taking responsibility, accepting, and then taking action to just be angry for a minute, be sad for a minute, be afraid for a minute. Let your body feel what it needs to feel. We call it feel it to heal it. And so we can, in venting, you can release stuff that, right, out of your body. It's the opposite of stress. It's the antidote for stress, in my opinion. So when you're talking about even some of the negative stuff, try to not complain, but vent. So you're releasing stuff as you go. So like I said, the antidote to stress is acceptance. So number 1 relationship skill, the ability to, most of us don't know that we can open or close our heart. That's an EQ skill. It's up to us whether we care. We were talking about that earlier. It's up to us whether we care or not. It's up to us whether we belong or not. There's fitting in, and then there's belonging, and those are very important. Empathy, one of our biggest communication skills or relationship skills, is to care about other person on purpose. On purpose, I'm going to understand. I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to care. Making the connections, especially when we're stuck at home, super important. Dr. Khalid mentioned this earlier. Reach out to people. Make sure that you are not totally alone. There's a lot of people out there having the same problems that you are. So connect with them. And safety is super important. Safety to yourself. Don't be abusive to yourself. Don't say that my feelings are a bad thing and don't do that and that's wrong and blah, blah, blah. You make it safe for yourself to be yourself. And then and also in your relationships, make it safe for other people to feel and be themselves. Safety is a huge part of EQ. Number one communication skill, speaking of relationships, is that I call it the soul, listening with soul, which is stop for a minute, open up your heart, like I said, on purpose, and just listen to people. And you can heal amazing stuff help other people heal and get through things if you will listen with soul. If you just listen, just really care about people, then they can say what they need to say and vent what they need to and get better. That's pretty cool. So these are this kind of came up with this the other day. There's in war, not to change the subject slightly, but in war, the most powerful weapon someone can carry is called an RPG, which is a rocket propelled grenade launcher. It's kind of like a little tank that you can carry around, this amazing thing. But we found that in EQ, there's also 3 RPGs. Resilience, right? You can, when stuff goes wrong, like there's a pandemic or something like that, imagine that, that you can manage it. Perseverance, you don't give up, you keep going, you go. And then grit. Check out grit. Grit is kind of one of the coolest words, I think, in the English language. Grit is, this is going to be tough. This is going to be hard. And I'm still going to do it. I can still do it. It's hard, but I can do this. So tell yourself, put it in the chat if you would. Well, I can do this, because you can put it in there. I can do this. Tell yourself and tell other people, I can do this. I know it's hard. It's difficult. It is. But you can do it. So we have basically 3 choices. When things go wrong, you can let it define you, you can let it destroy you, or you can let it strengthen you. And sometimes that strengthen is not pretty, it's not comfortable, but it is powerful, and it is the key in a lot of cases to getting through some very, very yucky stuff. So make it happen. So here's some things to take away if you could do, if you would. One is breathe. Breathing is highly recommended. It's silly, but it's true. And focusing on your breathing when you have yucky stuff going on inside or outside, you can if you concentrate on your breathing, it brings you back into the moment. Most anxiety, depression, etc., is about the future and is about the past. Right now, I just need to breathe. Right now, everything's fine. Right now, most of the time, it's okay. So just breathe and be aware of your breathing. Somebody mentioned meditation earlier. You just breathe. So believing, very important. Let yourself feel. Accept, as I talked about before, accept what's happening and accept what's happening inside of you. Doesn't mean you like it. Doesn't mean you want to change it. I mean, you don't want to change it. It just is accepting. Okay, yeah, this is happening. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm sad. Yes, I'm feeling hopeless, but I'm working on it. So venting, again, is really important. Last year, my biggest word was ask, which means, right, like I was talking about earlier, reaching out. There's a lot of people having a hard time like you are. Ask, can I contact you? Would you mind? Can we be friends? Can we get on a Zoom together? Can I have your WhatsApp number, or can you take mine? Ask, can I, just ask and make things happen. That's a personal power thing. Love, highly recommended. Connect and just live your life. So EQ rocks. That's what I call it. I think it's a good term that kind of sums it all up. And here's my contact information. If you have any questions, there's some on this free EQ stuff site. There's a bunch of things that you can sign up for free, including daily emails that come and positives. They're quotes from famous people, and they can make a difference in your life. I love doing that. So anyway, I'm done. Please feel free to enjoy the rest of the folks here. There's some great information. And thank you again for joining us and for caring about yourself and your life. So back to you, Nandini.
Thank you so much. Be patient. Give yourself some time to reflect a calmer inner state. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind and wise words. I hope this tip will help us a lot in this whole pandemic and COVID situation. I, I request all the participants to ask any questions from our speakers. They can raise their hand and we will they can unmute themselves and ask if they want to.
Yep. Any questions would be fine.
I will wait here for some questions if someone wants to ask.
Lee said sometimes people get so low they feel like they are not worth asking. I hear that. I hear that. Ask anyway. Ask anyway. It's uncomfortable. Do it anyway. That's part of the grit thing. Is like, this is so hard. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm doing it. So do it. Do it anyway. Push through it.
Yeah, there is one question. Yeah, how to control intrusive thoughts.
Okay. Let me just real quick. I call thoughts are like waves. They just keep coming. They just keep coming, right? All day long. Waves just keep coming. But we choose the ones we want to surf. It's kind of funny. But if they're intrusive and they're bugging you, just let them go on by. Just let them go on by. And if you don't like them, and they're not working for you, you change them. Okay. I hear that thought. That's awareness, acceptance, action. Aware. Oh, I saw that thought. I don't like it. And I'm going to put a new thought. I think I'm not worth asking, right? Mentioned earlier. Well, I think I will try this anyway. Make a new thought for yourself. You're trying to make new habits. It's uncomfortable at first and it kind of feels like you're faking it. Do it anyway.
Dr. Shritema Mitra Ghosh just raised her hand. Ma'am, you can ask, please unmute yourself and you can ask question directly to Mr. Matt.
Well, we took too much time, I think, so Dr. O needs to get going. So you can put more questions in the chat if you like, and I'll answer them there. How about that?
Exactly. Okay, you can ask question in chat and Mr. Matt will answer all those questions during it. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Stephen W. Oliver. He is also known as Dr. O, an emotional intelligence professor at University of Virginia, USA. According to him, learn the fundamentals of emotional intelligence and 4 basic hallmarks, that is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Understand how your mastery of basics of emotional intelligence can make you an exceptional leader for the future. I would welcome Dr. O. Over to you, sir. Dr. O.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes.
Okay, hello to everyone. Thank you so much for having me come to speak. Thank you, Dr. Khalid. Really appreciate you having me. Thank you, Nandini, for all of your coordinating. You've worked so hard to coordinate this. A big thank you to Mr. Matt Pearlstein for connecting me and having me come. Thank you to all the other colleagues and speakers here today. And to all the participants, welcome. So I'm Dr. O, Dr. Stephen Oliver. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States. I'm from the University of Pennsylvania, but I also teach at the University of Virginia online. That's quite a ways from where I live. And so what I wanted to do today is just give you an overview or tell you a story about putting emotional intelligence action to practice. All of what Mr. Pearlstein, what Matt just said, he gave a really good overview of emotional intelligence. I actually have a story here of what I did this past summer in putting this EIEQ to practice. So let's get started. Just briefly, what I wanted to do is, hang on. Oops. Okay. So just a brief agenda. I want to tell you a little bit about the course that I taught this summer. The students who were enrolled, what were they like? Who were they? What were they about? I wanted to tell you a little bit about the challenges that they faced coming to this class. What did they learn about EQ or EI? EQ, emotional quotient, and emotional intelligence. So those two terms I use interchangeably. I want to tell you about the feedback that they gave us from some of the assignments, and then the reflective learning. Their reflective learning, what did they actually learn and what are they putting into practice? So the course, this summer, the University of Virginia, what they did is they created a series of classes called Launchpad. These were short, compressed 3-week classes for traditional students. Now, I say traditional, these are 17, 18, 19, and 20-year-old students who typically go from high school to college. I use this differentiation because I also teach adult students. I teach students who return back to school from 27 to 50 or even 60. But these are traditional students. And what they did is the University of Virginia, we're trying to compress into 3 weeks. That's a whole nother topic for another time. I see education shifting and changing so dramatically, partially because of COVID, partially because of where we are. In any case, they asked me to teach my emotional intelligence course. It's a brief overview of emotional intelligence. And in that class, we discussed the 4 dichotomies that Matt Pearlstein mentioned: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. We study these 4 main hallmarks, these topics of emotional intelligence. Most of the founders of emotional intelligence use these 4 awareness areas. We focused on self-awareness. Self-awareness, to me and some other scholars, it's so important. If you can't be self-aware, then the other areas are hard to do. Now, there's debate there. Some people who, especially if you're in a clinician role, you go out and work with your patients and your clients, and you're doing social awareness and relationship management. But it's so important to know yourself. We talk about emotional triggers. What triggers you? What gets you stressed? What gets you worked up? We talk about EQ and how EQ can help us in times of stress, strife, and life-threatening issues. We had a wonderful guest speaker, Mr. Matt Pearlstein, who came in and talked about some of the challenges he's faced in his life and how EQ has helped him. We also talk in this class about the dark side of emotional intelligence. The dark side is how you can manipulate emotional intelligence. A lot of salespeople do this. Car salesmen, jewelry salesmen, people who sell things can mask their feelings. And then a lot of times people can hide their feelings and appear to be very happy or engaged, but yet they have a lot of deep emotional pain and strife. We also talked about cultural intelligence, the need to have a global mindset in this day and time. Burnout and stress, we talked about that. So many people are burned out and stressed, especially if you're working, and especially if you're working in a stressful environment. We had a lot of guest speakers, and then I asked the students to do some summary and self-reflection. Now, we also had emotional mindfulness. We ended the class with mindfulness. This was just kind of a breakdown of this class. This is a lot of topics. We went over this, but it was a basic survey and overview. All right, so who were my students? I'm having a little trouble here moving this. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. These were the 2 books that we used. The books, and they're not brand new. They're not hot off the press. They've been around for a while. Bradbury and Breeves, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's got a little test in the back. And again, what it does, it's kind of dangerous because it just opens the door. It gives you an overview of your emotions and where you are. And so I asked the students to reflect upon those emotions and take that little test. And again, we will put this for your reference in the chat here. This is one of the top 5 books of all time. So there's listings of the best books out there. This is Daniel Goleman, Dr. Daniel Goleman, a Harvard professor, and it's Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. It's pretty old, but it's timeless, timeless. And so these are just the two of the books that we used in this course. All right, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop sharing the whole screen here. I just cannot move these. All right, and I'm sorry if this is a little hard to see. Okay. All right, so who were the students that were enrolled in this class? Who were enrolled? So again, these were traditional students from the University of Virginia. Now, what is really interesting about these students is that they all went to Charlottesville, Virginia, like any traditional college here in the America or around the world. And then they were sent home because of COVID. They were sent home. These were liberal arts students, anthropology, sociology, international relations, biology, history, economics, and they were from all over the United States and around the world. So Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, England, Spain, a few from India, Africa, Europe, Brazil, South America. So they all came to the United States. They all came to Charlottesville. Then they were abruptly sent home. And so these are some of the challenges that these students faced. And so when they came to this emotional intelligence class, here is what they said. So they were returned back home, going back to family, going back to parents, grandparents, cousins, siblings, cats and dogs, pets. They were learning through Zoom live and connected to the university. But so many of them were angry and frustrated, even bitter, because they felt like their college experience was taken away from them. Some went back into abusive families. They had an abusive parent and then they were sent to school. There was lots of conflict. Now, if you are a college student, you're growing up, you're a teenager, you're emerging into adulthood, there is conflict with mom and dad. There's certainly conflict with brothers and sisters going back home and staying in the same room. And so a lot of the students were shocked. They were frustrated because they had to go back home and learn online. Now, some people loved it. Some people went back to some positive families. Not everything was negative. All right. Some got to reconnect with their high school students and they got to go live. But a lot of them faced some stressful things that happened. They told us in the class that, especially one young lady, she said that her father died from COVID in March. Another young lady told us that her father was sick from COVID. A lot had anxieties and some health issues. A lot were very frustrated. Some talked about mental health issues that they had. One young lady had an eating disorder. Again, they were angry, impatient, fearful. They had self-doubt. They had a lot of negative self-talk. So does anybody know what negative self-talk is, or what is self-talk? Does anybody know what that is? Well, self-talk is all that stuff that goes on in your mind. You get up in the morning to start your day and you have all this self-talk. I'm going to have a great day. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to enjoy class, or I'm not going to enjoy. I don't want to get up. I want to stay in bed, or I don't want to go to school. So a lot of this self-talk was negative. Again, there was some positive things. Not every student was negative. By the way, I had 2 class sessions, 3 weeks, 30 in each. And some did go home to positive families, loving families. Again, the household pet, the dog, the cat, how wonderful. All right, so let's talk just a little bit about what the students learned in this class. What did they learn? So for many of them, this was the first time that they learned about emotional intelligence. They learned about the 4 dichotomies or the concepts that Matt Pearlstein talked about a few minutes ago. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. They started to learn about those basics. A lot of students at that age, it's all about them. When you're a college student, when you're young, it's all about you. I think a lot of us, it's all about us. But in any case, they started to learn, wait a minute, it's not all about me. Emotional intelligence gets me to see other people. Emotional intelligence, if you can remember anything about emotional intelligence, especially in the social awareness dichotomy, is empathy, to learn about others, to walk in someone else's shoes. And so they started to say, hey, wait a minute. Yes, I feel like I'm in a bad situation, but it's not all about me. All my other college students and friends are going through this. Everyone around the world is going through this. And a lot of people don't have it as good as I do. They also began to learn about regulating their emotions. So, what else did they learn? I required them to do 2 different assignments. I first of all asked them to go shoot a video. They could do it on their telephones. Shoot a video, ask questions about other people. How are you doing? How's it going? How are you in COVID? And so this really helped the students to get out of themselves and ask about others. Then I asked them to write a paper, an end of semester, or I'm sorry, an end semester, it's a 3-week semester, an end of class paper to say, what did I learn? All right, what did I learn about myself? What did I learn about all of these different emotional intelligence concepts? And they were fantastic. And they all started to say, wait a minute, I'm starting to learn something. I can see that EQ can help me out with my studies, help me out with my social interactions with people, even though I'm only in Zoom. Where am I going with my life? College is a great time to figure out where you want to go with life. So they started to learn about that, managing their anger, managing their anxiety and impatience, managing their self-doubt, managing all that self-talk, turning it from negative to positive. So we got feedback. We got feedback from the students. They were surprised. They began to understand how EQ could help them. They started to be not as frustrated. They learned how to control this anxiety and anger. And again, they learned how to work with each of these 4 areas. Listening, Matt said that earlier. They really learned to listen. I will send you a video of social awareness from this gentleman in America, Reggie Bryant, and he really talks about listening, leaning into people, putting your phones down and listening to what someone else has to say. And again, learning about empathy. They also told us about choosing your battles. You know, when you are young and you want to argue and debate with your parents, figure out what's the most important thing to argue about. What, again, are those triggers? Is it my brother who drives me crazy? Is it my father who makes me angry? Is it just standing in line, waiting? Here in America, traffic is awful. If you're driving or riding in a car, traffic is horrible. That can be a trigger. So they learn to understand what those triggers are. And then balance. Balance is so important. Work, life, school balance, and having good relationships. So the last part of what I want to say to you is we ask the students, in addition to these 2 assignments, to also do some reflective learning, actually put skills to practice. All of what Matt said earlier, the skills to practice. And there's many ways you can do this. And I would encourage you to pick one of these. I think one of the best things is journaling, writing down your thoughts, your feelings, and then coming back a week later or 2 weeks later. Oh, wow, I was feeling that. Now I'm feeling a little better. So journaling, writing down, breathing and meditation. Breathing costs nothing. And again, I'm reinforcing what Matt said. If we just breathe before you go into a really stressful situation, or breathe before you take that exam, breathe before you write your paper, that can help. Again, exercise, as Dr. Khalid said earlier, exercise, walk around the block, run. A lot of my students are on sports teams, so they did get together and practice safely. This may sound really weird, but checklist, to-do list. Does anybody do to-do list? Anybody write to-do list in the morning or in the afternoon? I do them quite a bit, and it's so great to cross off. I got these 3 things done today. Now I've got 7 more for tomorrow, but that's okay. I got 3 done. Accomplishing things. And again, writing a paper, writing your thoughts, your feelings, sleep and rest. A couple of more reflective things are doing some fun things, joking, playing games, having activities, being on a sports team, being in a club. I'm involved in some professional things outside of my work, and so much of the professional things have gone online, but I'm still involved and still go to meetings. Getting involved with your community, friends, spirituality. If spirituality is really important to you, getting involved in that. And the other thing, this may sound very strange, is watching EQ movies. EQ movies that are fun and up. Frozen, The Lion King, E.T., Birdman, Boyhood. I know that sounds kind of silly, but really good movies where people have used their emotional intelligence. Another great one is Erin Brockovich. Love that movie. Julia Roberts, Doing Good to help people who have cancer. It's a really fun movie. So in summary, this action to practice. I got to teach a class this summer, 2 sessions, and I got to help students understand and learn about emotional intelligence and what was stressful in their lives coming from a COVID situation, having to go home, having to learn from a live in-campus to an online Zoom. Understanding their emotions, to really understanding what they were frustrated about, to talk about it, process it, learning the fundamentals of emotional intelligence, but then starting to say that they're not the only people, that they need to have empathy, walk in the shoes of others, be more aware of others, and then find these self-reflective ways to actually do things to manage their own emotions, manage their time. Again, balance is key. So here is my contact information. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. So thank you again so much for letting me speak today.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. When dealing with people, remember, you are not dealing with creature of logic, but creature of emotion. Thank you so much for such an informative and knowledgeable session. There is a question for you, Dr. O. It's from Vinita ma'am. That activity you discussed in your PPT that you have performed in your classroom, how do you do that? I mean, what are the methodologies, or what are the steps how to perform such activities in classroom?
Great question. So how do we perform them? So a lot of it is giving directions ahead of time before class and then asking questions in class. I didn't really get to do that much here. Breakout rooms are really powerful. So I use breakout rooms a lot, having the students go into rooms, talk about the questions in the breakout rooms. Again, I didn't really get to do this, but polling students, engaging them. I use a lot of YouTube videos. If I had more time, I would show a few videos. So it's just about a variety of methods within the class. And again, breakout rooms are so powerful to have students actually talk about what's going on. They have similarities when they're in breakout rooms.
Thank you so much. If any participant has any questions, they can put it in chat box so that our respective speakers can give you the proper answer. Thank you so much. Next, I would like to welcome our next guest of honor, Dr. Shanti Jones. Dr. Shanti is a certified philosophical counselor with a private practice in Taos, New Mexico. She regularly writes articles on philosophical counseling in APPA journals. She also has written and performed worldwide her philosophical cabaret on topics such as love, humor, wisdom, optimism, and evil. Over to you, Dr. Shanti. Please guide us towards the whole emotional intelligence.
Thank you so much, Nandini. I appreciate your help. Would you put my PowerPoint up, please?
Sure. Just wait a minute.
So Of course, I want to thank you all for being here, and to Dr. Khalid and Nandini and the other speakers. It's really an honor. I'm so pleased. Today, I'm going to talk about how both literature and philosophy can be helpful. They can be bright lights in dark times. I want to just begin by telling you that philosophical counseling and philosophy in general concerns itself with questions such as how should I live, and what ought I to do, and what can I know, and what may I hope for. And these questions are really what Immanuel Kant says are the basic questions that every thinking, sensitive person should be concerned with throughout their lives. And philosophical counseling helps clients to address these issues. Literature also concerns itself with these questions, with life's particularities and its complexities, as opposed to, say, in a more theoretical format. I use literature to, like bibliotherapy, to help clients to expand their learning outside of counseling. And I think teachers could also find these books that I'm going to talk about helpful for their classrooms. And I also think just as individuals, you will appreciate knowing about these works to help inform you how you should live in these dark times. Next slide, please. Pandemics have been around many times before. This is not a new happening. This photograph is from the Spanish flu in the early 1900s. So, but somehow every time we get surprised when another war happens, another pandemic happens. And the Stoics, who are philosophers from ancient Greece, they always advised us to prepare ourselves even when times were good, because it was inevitable in this world that we would likely have to face strenuous times. Next slide, please. So this is a joke from the New Yorker. It says, "Welcome to heaven. Would you like to buy a souvenir photo from your life?" And this is maybe how many people might look right now during the pandemic. And, they might be embarrassed later on to think that that's how much flipped out they got. Next slide, please. And really what we would like to be able to do is to go through these times and have many slides from our life. I'm not audible. Okay, let me see if I can turn it up.
You're audible, ma'am. You're
somebody
audible.
Somebody said I'm not, so I'm turning it up.
No, you are audible.
Okay.
Perfectly.
Okay, so this is how we would like to go through life and also appear at our death. And by looking at these situations that we're in advance and being prepared for them, we're more likely that we can be in this state. So I would also like to mention that when I was thinking about literature from India, of course, we have to mention the Bhagavad Gita, because even though it's not talking about a pandemic that's physical from the standpoint of an illness, it's talking about a pandemic, which is war. And Krishna says, that contact with these kinds of situations with matter, just, pleasure and pain, it can, we have to learn to face these things. They come and they go. And when they can't torment us anymore, when suffering and joy are equal, for him, he has courage and he's fit for immortality. So, we're going to talk about 4 literary works that come from the Western tradition, but the teachings that they have fit well into what is contained within the Bhagavad Gita. So every situation like the pandemic is called a limit situation. And a limit situation is an intensified state of being mortal, where death is often more in front of us. They're unavoidable because no matter what, we can't escape things like illness, death, divorce, loss of a job. They're going to happen to every human being. And when we're in them, they don't, like, just like the pandemic, there's no immediate resolution to them. And we can't shape reality to meet our expectations. So what's great about them is that they have the potential to give rise to questions that are connected intimately to our way of life. And we can explore our resolve within them and become wiser because of them. So all of these literary works have something to do not with necessarily with the outcome of the events, but with the assumption of responsibility that the main characters take within these events. So none of us can control how the pandemic will come out or how global warming is going to turn out. What we can have control over is how we can assume responsibility for ourselves and how we behave, how nobly we might behave, hopefully within these situations. So, and in every one of these literary works, they present events that are typical that we're going through now, as obsessional attention to the signs and the symptoms, vulnerability to misinformation, stigmatization and isolation of suspect families and groups, scapegoating of ethnic groups, the poor and the homeless, social distancing and quarantine, shutdown of borders, flight from hotspots and epicenters. So through studying these works, we can be enabled to transcend the immediacy of this moment and address the moral questions at hand. Next slide, please. So these will be the 4 literary works that we'll be considering. Next slide, please. The first one is The Plague, which is by Albert Camus. He was a Nobel Prize winning author. He wrote this book about a town of Orléans, which was in Algiers in the 1940s. Next slide, please. So this is the town, and what he said was that people had been reduced to doing nothing more than making a living. And of course, that's what we could say in many big cities today too. And the existential themes that are contained within this novel that you can use for your students, your clients, or thinking about it for yourself. One is, of course, the absurdity of life. We try so hard, and then something like a pandemic comes and can wipe so many of us out. And what does it all mean? And the inevitability of death. We like to think that we're invulnerable, but then something like a pandemic brings it home that, yes, we are going to die, and we have to face this more head on as individuals. And then there's also our commitment to our individual moral freedom and our responsibility within it. And within this novel, Camus shows that the plague can actually be any kind of disaster, suffering, or terror, and how he illuminates how these negative situations can be overcome. So one of the things that's neat about this novel too, during this plague, there's different townspeople that you can kind of see different attitudes that we see today. Like the priest, first he thinks the plague is a scourge of God, and then later on he thinks it's a test of the Christian's acceptance of suffering. And then there's the journalist, who how he portrays and doesn't portray the pandemic because of his own political situations. There's the rebel who tries to correct political injustice. There's the guy who gets to engage in black market activities, like those people who sell Clorox at high prices because they can get a good deal now off of the pandemic. And then there's our hero, Dr. Ryu, who is emotionally intelligent. He is socially aware of his own feelings and the feelings of the people around him, and he does his duty and he connects people together. So there's an example, a live example of an emotionally intelligent person doing something that we can admire and strive for ourselves. So Camus says that it's up to us not to join forces with the pestilences, like be they bacillus like ideologies or pollution or overcrowded cities. And he also encourages us to take the victim's side, the people who are suffering, because when we take their side and we help them, this is how we attain peace. Next slide, please. The next book I would like to tell you about is Nemesis by Philip Roth. Philip Roth is an American author. He died not long ago, and he wrote this book in 2010. It was the last book that he wrote. He won a Pulitzer Prize for his work. And within this book, next slide, please. It takes place in a kind of Jewish ghetto area in New Jersey in the 40s, and the plague here, as in Algiers, it was cholera. In Nemesis, it's polio. So what he does is he portrays the guilt, the panic, the suffering, the misdirected rage that gets unleashed during this outbreak. And important philosophical themes that can be explored with your clients or students or yourself would be, what does it mean to live by one's character or not? And what kinds of choices fatally can shape a life? And how does the individual withstand the onslaught of circumstances? So this plot pivots on an error that the major character, whose name is Bucky, that he makes right in the beginning of the story. So all of us have had experiences of times when we know what we should do, but we just don't have the moral strength to do it. And this is what happens with this character. So it's a really good example of seeing someone who doesn't do it and the consequences. And so I really admire this author and this book for that reason. Also, the writing is really great. So because he makes this error, and of course the author is Jewish, so we talk about Jewish guilt.
যদি এখানে আসে টিভিটা নিভিয়ে দেবে পরিষ্কার যদি আসে বলেছি আমি তো ওকে বল
So guilt is a theme because this man doesn't live up to his character. And so the guilt, like one of them is, why do I continue to live while others around me die? Or why do I get to live comfortably while others are suffering spiritually and financially? And what, if anything, should I do about this situation? Other themes that can be explored through this pandemic that's portrayed in Nemesis is also people's unexamined beliefs in God. Because all of a sudden it's like, whoa, why would God do such a thing? When in childhood we think of God as such a loving, caring being. Then also other themes are humankind's failure to accept the reality of illness and death. And are we prepared to accept the reality of death? And would a benevolent God like this accept and allow this kind of suffering? Why doesn't God answer our prayers? Why doesn't he help us? Why did he create COVID-19 in the first place? And then it's also good to explore the weakness of our will. Is it possible we can actually act against our own self-interests? And are we rational agents, or are our decisions dictated more by primitive forces on whose behalf reason merely provides rationalization. Next slide, please. This next novel comes from a Frenchman, Jean Giono, who died in 1970. He was also a film director. There was a movie made of this work. It takes place in the southern part of France. Next slide, please. In the area of Provence, and here is a cholera outbreak. And this young man, our hero, his name is Angelo. He's Italian, his name means angel. So he is, what's wonderful about this novel is that he's a man of amazing character. And not only does Jean Giono show his character through his actions, but also how he considers the situations that he's in, both before and afterwards. I found it so fascinating and helpful to myself to how to think more completely towards maintaining good character. So the other person besides Angelo in this novel that's really important is this elderly doctor that he meets at the end, who's very wise because he's read all these philosophical novels and he's thought about life and seen all these patients. And this doctor has concluded that humanity is consumed by vanity and pride and jealousy. And that when faced with the possibility of dying from cholera, people don't care anymore about even their own family, much less anyone else. And suddenly they realize they're going to lose everything. And they're asking themselves if what they thought of as living is really all that worthwhile. And that knowledge of why a person dies of cholera depends on knowledge of how they lived. Each person is loved and hated and suffered, but we don't see any trace of this to be found in their autopsy, but it all lies within the key to their death. And we come to know that a person's success in not succumbing to cholera represents a just and appropriate reward for his noble approach to life. So the bottom line in facing this pandemic and how can I survive, Giono's answer resembles that of the Stoics. Your best chance is through living a virtuous life and striving towards the highest good. So, okay, so now the last book is, I think it's my time is just about up. So I'll tell you about the last book. Next slide, please. This is The Enemy of the People, and it's by Henrik Ibsen. He's actually a play. Next slide, please. And it takes place in Norway and in these baths, and it's a typhoid outbreak. And the main character is also a very socially responsible man. So you get to see in this play a person who maintains his ethics throughout while other people don't. And you'll also learn more about social responsibility, which is something that many people you can see who don't want to wear masks and don't want to be careful, don't think about. So it's a short work, but very valuable for being inspired by a great person. So in closing, I'd like to just say again from the Bhagavad Gita that we have to abandon our attachments to the fruit of our actions and be content and independent, even when we engage in action. And these times, we don't know what the fruits of our actions will be. All we can do is to pursue the right action. And each one of these novels shows how the right action can or cannot be pursued in times of pandemics. And you'll be able to learn much from them. Next slide, please. So I'd just like to conclude with showing you that philosophy and great literature can be beacons of light, which glow brightly, especially in dark times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Thank you so much, Dr. Shanti, for enlightening us to the wonderful path in this stressful situation. Thank you so much for your wise word. It helps us a lot to tackle with all the hurdles that we are getting in this COVID-19. Next, I would like to request all the participants to, if you have any questions or queries regarding each topic, you can put it on the chat box so that we can convey it to our speakers. Due to time constraint, we can't have individual interactive sessions. Hope you understand that. Next, I would like to welcome our another guest of honor, Lee Garrett, certified from 6 Seconds. Lee specialized in coaching teachers to install in their student methods that help them to focus and manage their emotions and collaborate and set goals. After a successful career as a reading, writing, and study skilled teachers how to achieve the same success. Her book, Cognitive Yoga, is available at Amazon and will guide teachers to weave the benefits of SEL into their daily classes. I would like to request Lee to come over and give us her insightful teachings. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to say I'm very honored to be among this company. It's excellent, good company, and everybody is so generous and so kind and willing to share. And there's a great deal of wisdom in our talks. I just want to mention, they used to call emotional intelligence wisdom. So just to be sure, I'm going to present to you a set of practices. And let me ask a question first. How many of you are exhausted? Write in the chat, are you exhausted? Is something going on in your life that you just can't get past and you find that you're drained emotionally? Can I see some comments in the chat room? All right, 5 new messages, I will. And Nadini, would you make sure to put up the list? Okay, thank you. Yes, 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 yes. And drained emotionally. Yes, very much. I know. I totally sympathize with you. So these are very simple practices that are designed to conserve your energy. That I belonged to a meditation school for 40 years. And the source of my practice comes from it was a school in London. And Mr. McLaren went to see Sri Shankaracharya Saraswati in the north. And he asked him questions about how to live a good life. And when he came back, he gave his students, Mr. McLaren gave his students sets of practices and exercises that were designed to help you calm down, control your emotions, and conserve your energy. And that comes from this. And I also shared with my students when I was teaching for 10 years, the same practices. Each one of them is worth trying for quite a long time because the depth of what they can do is significant. So the first one is come to a complete rest before beginning a new task. We tend to go through life we have a desire, there's an action, and then there's a result. Desire, action, result. Desire, action, result. Desire, action, result. Desire, action. And it goes like a rat's race. It goes on and on and on and on, and we never stop. I taught my students that you need to rest. The added step before you go on to a new activity is to stop. I needed to stop because I wanted to get in touch with my senses, to become oriented to the new task. But you also need to stop because your brain has to consolidate and remember the information. If you are operating 90 miles an hour all the time, you are bound to be exhausted emotionally and physically. So it's important to come to a complete rest before beginning a new task. For example, when you sit down to drive in your car, take a pause. You can do a listening pause, which is just bring your attention out and listen as far as you possibly can to the tiniest, most subtle noise. And then you go on. The next step is do one thing at a time. I've included a resource written on that, do one thing at a time. People suppose that they're getting more done with multitasking, but what they're actually doing is doing an activity, there's a delay, and then they switch to a new activity. It's very inefficient because your brain has to reorient itself to the new activity. This is coasting on the surface of information. It's not actually getting into a depth where you're learning and processing what you're doing. They've done time studies, scientific studies, and it's obvious that doing one thing at a time is more efficient, more profound. Complete each action. Think about someone you know that you consider wise. All right. How do they behave? How do they finish a job? When you complete each action, you are putting the task down. You put your tools away. You take your car keys and you put them in that special spot that you keep your car keys. I have actually found my cell phone in the vegetable bin. I have put my car keys, hung it on a hook that was with the pots and pans. So I'm not implying that I don't lose it from time to time. But if you complete each action and you have a time to clean your tools, to put them away, you're going to begin to understand that the completeness of the process is an improvement, and you'll set yourself up for the next step or the next activity, which is going to be so much easier if you haven't lost your tools or if you haven't put the car keys in the vegetable drawer. Next one. Are there any questions so far? I don't see. I'm looking at the chat. Okay. Hearing, yes. This is about nurturing yourself and taking care of your body and your mind. There are three basic kinds of energies, and this is a model, one of the many models, that there's mental energy, emotional energy, and physical energy. And you have to keep all of those in a kind of balance. Focusing your attention where the work is taking place is one of the most profound practices that you can do. Now, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're going to paint a wall. You take your brush and you dip it into the paint, and the temperature of the room is going to make a difference. You put the paint on the wall and you're going to notice if it is going on smoothly or if it's spotty and lumpy, and does it need more water? Do you have to stir the paint? Do you need to just dip it lightly, or do you have to go further in? Every bit of information is available to you if you're focusing your attention where the work is taking place. There is a space between that brush and the wall. If you zone in right on that particular space, there is a whole world of information. There's not only the physical information, but you will know how the chemicals are interacting with each other. And at some point, you may go even deeper. You may go into a practically microscopic information set about what's going on with the materials that you're using. The next step. don't criticize yourself or others. Now, we can all of our self-criticism is very damaging. And it sets up a limit on what you believe you're able to do. And your beliefs will either support your energy or dissipate it. If you criticize yourself, like, I'm no good at that, or they told me that I didn't do that well, or I got fired from that job because I was just terrible at it. Those kinds of things just make you feel small, and it doesn't do any good. A positive statement opens up the door to, okay, I'm going to try. It didn't work out so well, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to wrangle my energy. I'm going to focus on this task, and I'm going to get it done. A positive belief makes all the difference. Don't criticize yourself or others. All aggression towards others begins with criticism, with an inner voice saying, I don't like that person. They dress funny. I don't like the way they do this or that or the other thing. And that sets up a negative space where you're perceiving other people through that filter that you don't like them. And what's the point of that? Not liking someone. They are what they are. People generally do the best they can. This is not the same as discrimination. You may know that someone is unlikely to return the book that you loaned to them, but that's not the same thing as criticizing them. You can say, well, I was just going to give it. I'm going to let that book go. However, when you criticize someone in a way that is going to start alienating and draining your relationship with them, it's a problem. So we try not to criticize. In fact, just go on to the next thought. You don't have to stay there. Do what is needed without regard for likes and dislikes. So, true confession. I am absolutely phobic about math. I'm phobic about doing my taxes. I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. The reason I am so phobic about numbers and math and things like that is I'm dyslexic. So I can understand the concept of what to do is right, but I switch the numbers. So that set up a cycle where I'm slightly traumatized and I can't approach things or math alone in a clean way. In order to do something effectively, you can't have an inner dialogue that says, I hate this. I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this, and so on and so forth. Likewise, if you really like something and you prefer to do it again and again and again and again, that's not self-control. You need to bring in the reins of self-control. Think of it as riding a horse, okay? And your emotions are that energy beneath you or within you, and you need to ride the horse to get to your destination. So you take the reins and you control it in a neutral, positive way. Riding the horse well demands that you stay still without an aversion or a desire. Work 7 is work in a quiet, clean environment. Clutter bothers me. Dirt bothers me. Dust bothers me. You need to have a fresh space. And I like to have lots of just plain space, like a wall that's clean or a floor that's clean or a desk that doesn't have a lot of stuff on it. Now, I know there are geniuses out there that do have a lot of clutter and they like it. But according to the principles of Feng Shui, you really need to organize and to do less, to have less. Simplicity gives you the space to create more. You don't want to collect things so much that it becomes like a swamp with everything gathered together and all clumpy together and disorganized. And then you don't know where anything is. It's easier to find the needle in the haystack if you have a very small haystack. So consider decluttering. Consider keeping your space fresh. And with that, I mean also fresh air and sunlight and water. And adding those elements into your space is a very good idea. And it brings energy into a space. Consider one another. We often don't realize how our behaviors are affecting other people. For example, I was meditating one time, and my son, who was 4, walked in, and he turned on the TV. He didn't even know I was sitting there. And I was like, what? So I had a book handy. I threw the Bhagavad Gita at him. The thing is that you must notice by looking at people's faces or their body language, or if you have a responsibility to complete a task so someone else can get something else done, you need to consider that that person needs you to fulfill your obligation. Considering one another is also being aware of the noise level, how you're acting. You do not have the right to take your bad mood out on someone else. You don't have the right to be cranky in the morning if you're making someone else's day miserable. Just think of how your behavior is affecting other people and how what you're doing is affecting other people. 9, work for improvement, not perfection. Perfection and perfectionism is absolutely paralyzing because the standards are so high, you can't move. A lot of people who have a tendency towards being perfectionistic procrastinate. They put off, they postpone their work or completing their work forever because why bother doing it if I can't do it correctly? But you must give yourself a chance. Nobody begins as an expert. Nobody begins at the top or the peak of the ladder. And it's probably not a good idea to compare yourself on the internet to the superstars in any given discipline. The best way, the healthiest way, is to work for improvement over your own last try. So you work for improvement, not perfection, because that keeps you growing and moving and thriving. It is a healthy thing to work for improvement. It's a healthy thing to allow yourself the kindness to make a mistake and to say, okay, well, I can make that better. 10, create helpful routines, study, rest, play, and work in the proper amounts each day. Dr. Kelly said something along those lines. You need rest, you need fresh air, you need your hobbies, you need to exercise and listen to music and enjoy life. You are not designed, the human body is not designed to just work. In fact, being a workaholic is a tremendously unhealthy way to behave. And it's like a kind of addiction, because a workaholic is someone who spends no time nurturing themselves. They're forcing themselves to perform. And in the end, it isn't very effective. You get extremely dull and you have no ideas and you're not talking to people and socializing, which you need. If you don't have those outlets and the variety in a day that keeps you healthy and sane. So I'm now open to any questions if you'd like. And I just want to tell you a little bit. I was initiated in a minibus on the island of Corfu in 1970 when some people were coming back from India and they were studying under the same guru that the Beatles studied under. So I consider that great humor. All right. Would anyone like to ask a question?
Ma'am, there is a question from you from Vandana Chaturvedi, India.
All right.
The question is,
yeah,
I'm telling you the question right now.
Okay.
Her question is, how can I relate my professional work with spirituality? Will it help me to improve better?
So the question is, how can I read my book or write my book with
how can I relate my professional work with spirituality?
Oh, well, all of these practices are spiritual. It's your intention. When you come to a rest before beginning a new class and a new task, and your intention is to be of service. Your intention is to do the will of the absolute, do the will of Brahma. Then you are including, you don't have to say it, you don't have to announce it to anybody. Just in your heart, say, I dedicate this activity for the good of all. And that will do it. Another thing you can do is if you're having a really hard time with a particular person or a particular activity, you can do it as a sacrifice. You can say, I dedicate this activity as my self-control is a sacrifice. My willingness to take this on is a sacrifice for the good of all. That's one of the ways. Nadini, you look still.
Hello. No, I am there only. Actually,
Yes.
Next question is from Ashish Mishra, India. Why negative thoughts come more than positive thoughts in our mind?
Okay, why?
Negative thoughts
Yes.
comes more than positive thoughts in our mind.
I know why. Here's the ticket. We are survival organisms. That's what the primitive man was. Oh, there's a lion. Oh, I have no food. Oh, no grain. All right. You have a body that's designed to see the negative because it's danger, 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 danger. And then you're taking care of yourself. We don't have as many dangers as we did in the past. It's also a choice. It seems that we're like Velcro for negative thoughts and Teflon for positive thoughts. You really have to make an effort to go positive. You can also go neutral. You can say, oh, it's just that way, or they're doing the best they can. I don't like it. You don't have to like a situation in order to deal with it. It just is. But you do need to acknowledge that your positive effort make a difference. It does make a difference. And the more you practice it, the better it is.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, it means a lot. Really, our emotions need to be educated as our intellect. It is
Mhm.
important to know how to feel, how to respond, and how to let life so that it can touch ourselves. So, thank you so much, ma'am, for such a wonderful tips in our life. And I hope it will help us a lot to balance our life in an appropriate way. Thank you so much. And I would like to tell all of you that Lee, ma'am has a book named Cognitive Yoga. It is available in Amazon, but she is trying to be trying to it as in Kindle also, right, ma'am?
Right.
Yeah, can you tell us about your book for a little bit?
Oh, it's for teachers. I took the material I learned in school, and I used the Sanskrit words to explain like Buddhi and Bhavana and Antakarana and all those. And I applied the practices I was learning in the philosophy school to the classroom. And it's what happened and how it worked and what benefit the students got out of. It was done, I started that about 2000, the year 2000. So it was a little bit ahead of its time. Now everybody's practicing mindfulness, but it's very effective, and there's a lot of fun in the book too. Exercises that you can bring the students to a short meditation or awareness of their senses or a sense of safety, all kinds of activities.
Thank you so much. All the participants are again requested to drop your messages, or you can drop your questions in chat box so that our speakers can answer your questions. Now, I would like to welcome our another guest of honor, Gayatri Datta, founder of Sisters Living Works. She lost family members to suicide. Although raised in India, where suicide carries significant social stigma, she created Sisters Living Works, a non-profit organization dedicated to raising awareness, reducing the stigma, and decrease suicides in India through education, support, and encouraging help-seeking behavior. Over to you, ma'am. Give us some enlightenment so that we can help us in our daily life. Ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nandini, and thank you, Dr. Khalid. Thank you, everyone. I'm just honored to be here, invited for this. And I'm going to do a little bit of sharing. Let me go to this. Share. Okay, I have to go to the top. And I guess I can go step by step. It doesn't matter.
It's visible, ma'am.
Is it? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, good. Welcome everybody. Hi, how's everybody feeling? I hope everybody is getting very involved and, learning a lot. And I know this has been a long 2-hour sitting. So, maybe stretch your arms, stretch your legs, take a short walk where you can still hear us. But I am the founder of Sisters Living Work. Most of our work has been in India, in Mumbai. And right now, because of the COVID, we are doing a lot of online workshops. We do a lot of support groups. And when I started in 2014, I'll just give you a little background. I've lost siblings to suicide. I've lost a cousin, her daughter. I've lost friends to suicide, all in India. So even though I knew there's a lot of stigma, I realized that I was kind of numbed by the silence when I went back after I lost my younger sister to suicide in 2011. And I felt that I needed to do something to start a conversation. So when I started this, there was a little bit of resistance. People didn't want to call it suicide. They wanted to call it mental health. And I said, that's not what I'm doing. My focus is suicide. So because mental health, there could be so many, it's so wide and so broad. So we started off doing a lot of workshops for people, a lot in schools, a lot in colleges, a lot in communities, and now we're doing it online. And we also do a lot of support group. We do one for suicide survivors every month, and one or two for them, and one or two for people concerned about the mental health, about general situations. So there's support given. What can you do? What can you take away? How do you handle your day-to-day activities? So there's right now, as we know, suicide has increased, as I think Matt had alluded to that, how in US it's also increased significantly. And many of you know about the actor, I'm sure, who died by suicide. What was his name? Sushant? Anyone? I forget his name.
Yes, it's Sushant Singh Rajput.
Okay, Shishant. So anyway, in Bangalore, there's not a whole lot of studies that were done, but I'll tell you a short one that was done in Bangalore. And they sent out questionnaires to about 300 people, and they got responses from 159 or 160. And what they found that the common problems that people were facing during these times of COVID is that 88% were suffering anxiety, 76% anxious because of job loss, 74% stress, and 73% isolation. And then therapists observed an increase in clients who have self-harmed, as well as those who have expressed suicidal ideation or death wish. And that increased, according to the small survey, by 30%. However, we often forget about the caregiver. And therapists are experiencing caregiver fatigue as a result of the pandemic, lockdown pressure, and doing mostly psychiatry. And that increased by 62%. And so, from there, I'll go on, like maybe some of you, you can, write, you can message. If some of you have had more depression, have been experienced more anxiety, because they are very closely related, depression and anxiety. Sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish between those two. I know a person, I'll tell you personally, a friend of mine here in the US, she becomes so anxious, she has to clutch onto her stomach. She runs at night to the bathroom and she just skulls there. And that's how bad anxiety can be, and there are medicines, but she goes for therapy, you need to go for help. And people often want to know, what is the cause for suicide? Well, there is no one cause. It could be social, it could be economical, cultural, all these kind of events come together, and then there might be a certain trigger that happens. Suddenly you have a job loss with all the things that are going on in your life. Some people have a genetic tendency to inclination to be depressed. And then you have, either job loss, which is happening now. You can't go out, you can't do the things that you had to do. And so you feel a sense of hopelessness and despair. However, this next slide tells you people who die by suicide don't want to end their lives. They want to end their pain. So this is very, very important. When I was talking to psychiatrists here, one of my founders is a psychiatrist from the USA. She used to work in the Army, Navy. And so we kind of discuss all this a lot about suicide and what is it? Why do people want to end their lives? And it's almost so painful. And I'm being told by people who have actually been with these people that it's almost like, when you have a huge pain in your arm and you want to cut it off, because I know sometimes, I've fallen and I've cut my leg and I'll be whining at home. Can I chop this leg off so that the pain will go away? It's almost that way. It's not that they're trying to kill themselves, but there's this misconception a lot of times that people want to end their life because things are not working out for them, and that's really not true. So we just want to be aware of that. And so what are the causes of suicide? It could be environmental, historical, social, health, social isolation. So what is environmental? Anybody, any guesses what environmental causes could be? Any guesses? It could be death, divorce, somebody has access to drugs, somebody say they've been exposed to death, the news of death, like we know Shashant and a couple of people when they die by suicide, then again that it triggers people who are already inclined to those. There's clusters that happen. So that's the environmental. Historical, which you have to pay a lot of attention to, could be people who have already attempted suicide. The likelihood of their attempting and actually dying by suicide goes up considerably, or they have a family history of suicide. And then, social media, like how many of you might know of the blue whale? I know some other things are happening. We had a huge article once we had written on it about the blue whales where people in India were, killing themselves because of this game that was happening. And there are so many games. And then, you talk about the health. When people are suffering, mental or physical, then when you're depressed because you have cancer or you have a huge heart problem and you don't see much hope of recovering from it, there's a tendency to take away that pain from you. And social isolation, that's a huge factor. And that's where, right now in the COVID crisis, we are going to talk a little bit more about that. It's important to remember a majority of suicidal people communicate their thoughts and intentions. They often send out signals and statements about wanting to die, feeling useless, and so on. All those pleas for help must not be ignored. So, one time, most of my workshops are now done by people in India. But there was, when I first started off, I did a couple of workshops to some psychologists and therapists. And one thing they asked me is, after the workshop, they didn't ask me right away, but after the workshop, they came up to me, somebody talks about it. Should I take them seriously? And I said, yes, you have to take. And what I say is, when you dare someone and you ignore someone, how, as a little kid, I remember when I used to play and there was this high height, hill, we would stand on these stairs and people would tell me, dare me, oh, you can't jump off that. And I went and jumped. Of course, I was young and nothing happened. But then when you dare people that, oh, no, you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it. This is a cry for help when they're saying something. And yes, people say they're trying to, pretend or something. Don't take it that way. Take it very seriously because it is a cry for help. And suicide, one of the things people, and I've noticed that a lot more in India, that, they will do what they will do. That is not true. Suicide is one of the most preventable diseases. It has to be, once it's taken care of, in the early stages in particular, as with everything else, when you have a health problem, you don't take care of it, it gets complicated. So does suicide. You have other factors that happen, and then the whole mental issue becomes a little bit more complicated. So you need to, whenever you see people, try to see what's happening, listen to them. And what are the warning signs you look for? Speech, behavior, mood, and we'll go into some of this if anyone wants to say anything about what speech is. So there could be direct or indirect verbal speech, warning signs. I don't know if anyone's heard their friends or someone just kind of joke or even say, I want to kill myself. I'm suicidal. I have a plan to kill myself. I won't be here anymore. I wish I were dead. What is the point of living? My family would be better off without me. That's a very common thing I've heard. I've heard it from my sister. She didn't personally tell me, but I've heard, because I was not in India then, that she did say, you know, I think my family will be better off. And these are signals that she's given. My life is unbearable and will never get better. I hear voices telling me to kill myself. So these are things, you know, these are some of the things that we know, the indirect verbal warnings. I can't imagine living the rest of my life like this. I just want to be alone. I am tired. I'm having a hard time. You know, I love you, right? And that's kind of a signal, you know, I love you. So she wants, or he wants to disappear. And then the next one says, yeah, I want to disappear. Will you miss me if I'm gone? My life is hopeless. It's never getting better. So these are all cues that they're giving out that, you know, you want to listen to, be careful. And in this world, what has happened is our life has become so fast and we are so bombarded with so much that we don't stop to listen to people. And people often say, people have often asked me, like, you know, this person was fine. What happened? And you know, the thing is, you haven't listened to them. You haven't paid attention. Your life was too hectic. And then what is behavior? Isolating from families and friends, staying indoors all day. You know, I had a cousin who died by suicide, and she used to, you know, when days she was depressed, she'd just be, you know, laying in bed and not wanting to get out or do anything. And she was brilliant, she had a PhD, but, you know, that's when she was down, she was down. There was no way without help and without medication. So also this fear of taking medications, you know, there's a chemical imbalance in your brain. And sometimes counseling and therapy does not work. Sometimes you have to take the medicine. And, you know, the stigma with that, we talk about, you know, not being afraid to go to the doctors. And one of the things that Bangalore study did was they did talk a lot about, let me tell you what the percentage of people who were coming back about, anyway, we'll go to that afterwards. Let's just focus on this. Increased use of alcohol or drugs. I don't know if any of you have experienced this. They try to give away treasured possessions. Lack of motivation for self-care, like the daily activities, like basic activities, they don't feel like doing. It's just, you know, and you can't rationalize with them at that time because their brains are not functioning. It's just, they're unable to do the basic things. And that's a cue. If it happens for a short period, you know, we all experience that sometime with job loss or someone's death or something, we feel bad. But when that is a continuous process, it's going on for weeks, we realize that that person needs help, or that realization or the understanding that we have to instill in this person that you need to get some help. This is, you know, before it gets any worse. Drastic changes in eating or sleeping. And it's not necessarily that they are going to eat less or more. It depends on person. Some people eat more, some people eat less. Some people sleep more, some people sleep less. Losing the desire to take part in favorite activities, having trouble thinking or concentrating, and unexpected decline in academic performance. And that we see a lot of. And the feeling is depression, impulsive. People become extremely impulsive because they're very anxious. And apathy, anxiety, humiliation is a big thing that I experienced myself. That whatever you say, they start crying. and they feel you're always trying to humiliate them, even though you know you're not, but somehow that's how they respond to it. That's their brain chemical. There's more rage, there's more agitation, there's more anger. There's a really good video on young people where they have so much anger, they take drugs, they're always angry because they don't know how to deal with the situation, and irritability. So what we say is, when you hear someone or when you see, what do you do as a first responder? And this is also, we have an online course which is for free. You can go to our website, and it's called Learn to Act, and anyone can take that course. And it gives you a broad view of what, in much more detail than this would. You ask, you care, and you treat. So asking and caring is so important. So what do you ask? Ask the person if he or she is thinking about suicide. I don't know how many of you have heard, and I've heard that a lot in India, that, oh, if I ask her, isn't that going to make her start thinking about suicide and want to die by suicide? And that's, a lot of research has been done on it, and it's not true. So ask them, if you see someone in a very critical condition, being very, very depressed, and you see they're unable to function normally, then ask. Listen to what he or she has to say. This is what I emphasize a lot. And listen without judging. Don't make judgments, because the brain is not going to, firstly, don't try to analyze it, and then don't try to judge. Acknowledge his or her talk, behavior, and feelings. Acknowledge their feelings. Make them feel warm. Make them feel comfortable. What are the don'ts? Don't debate whether suicide is right or wrong. This is not the time to do that. Discuss whether feelings are good or bad. Lecture the person on the value of life. Yeah, when I lost my sister to suicide, there was a whole lecture going on among my sister's neighbors to me, how I should act and why did she do that. And there was a whole, so, even when you're in a situation where somebody's died by suicide and you are there, it's very difficult to talk. Just be there, just be comforting. Don't try to make these judgments and these value statements. It does not help us. And so be very careful, just being there, and just, that's very comforting when you're there. But making these value judgments does not really help, because the person is gone. And telling me what the person, why did she kill herself, and she was being very selfish, those are very, very negative talks that you don't want to delve in. Care for the people. Do let the person know you care and understand. Discuss and care about what is troubling him or her. Maintain good eye contact. That's really important, to maintain eye contact. And why do I say that? Is because when you maintain eye contact, when you're looking away, you're distracted. When you maintain eye contact, you're giving the person undivided attention. And the person, no matter how depressed they are, they understand those aspects of your connectivity. You're trying to connect, and your genuineness. Care if she has a plan for suicide. Listen without judging. And that, to me, is so critical, without judging. Don't judge people, because we have a tendency to judge people as human beings, but try not to judge people, especially in these situations. Don't encourage him or her to do it. Don't act shocked. This will put a distance between you. So don't, if you're going to act shocked, the person is not going to talk about it anymore. And so, you're not going to know much. And find a professional help as soon as possible. And if you can't, call someone to help someone, to find a professional help, or if they're not in that very, very critical stage, then talk to them and ask them, is there someone they would be able to communicate with, and then you will get that person, help them connect to that person who they can talk about it and share about their feelings, where they can get help, and then through that person, perhaps you can get them to a professional person. But if they are in an emergency where you see they're very, very critical, then you need to somehow get the person to some professional care. And so the don'ts are, don't leave the person alone. This is very critical. Be sworn to secrecy. So one of the things, I don't know if some of you might be counselors, there was a question that came up is, as a counselor, you do say that confidentiality, whatever they say is going to be confidential. Well, I talked to my friend who's the psychiatrist. She's like, there's always should be a caveat that if there is going to be self-harm, or if we hear things about self-harm or you're going to harm someone, then you want to make it very clear that then you're not sworn to keep that confidential, because it doesn't serve anyone to be confidential there. And then if you lose that person, that's not going to help. So that's something that you need to remember, that you're sworn to confidentiality about what's happening. But if they are going to kill themselves and if they're going to die, then you put that caveat there so that you can help them. And here are some of what to do when one is suicidal. I won't go through all that. It's the same, more in detail. So I want to take a few minutes. Every few minutes, we are losing someone to suicide. And every 4 minutes, they say. And in India, there's over 2 lakhs of people who die by suicide. But in the world, it's 8 lakhs. 8 lakhs for everyone, it's 800,000. So I'm using lakhs because that's what they use in India. And so, you can see a large proportion of that is with, in India. And among ages 15 to 33, it is the second highest, according to Vikram Patel, and it's soon going to become the highest number of suicides in that age group. So those are the age groups that are very affected. And, again, there was another study he did where he found that among men, when they went to high school, I think 40 of the total number of suicides, 43% had higher education, but among women in that age group, it went to whopping 90%. So, the higher educated women tend to die by suicide more in India among those age groups. So that's also very important to remember. It's a lot of cultural. There have been studies in the US, in the National Institute of Health, where they do talk about, in many countries, it's a lot of the suicides are due to genetic factors, but in many of the Asian countries, it's more cultural, social factors. Offering support can play an important role in combating suicide. The risk of suicide and dying by suicide increases where individuals are alone and isolated. Social connections can be a protective factor by simply being there, showing love and care to those disconnected, vulnerable, and suffering can save lives. These little acts of kindness can have a significant impact on the lives of these individuals. And then uncertainty during COVID. So what has happened during COVID is, one of the problems we are facing is we want to connect, but we want to hug people. Like, the other day I was running and we stood on 2 ends of the road with a mask, a friend of mine going the other way. She's like, I want to hug you. And I said, yeah, I want to hug you. But, you can't do that. And that's something so important, the touch and the feel of people, the warmth. And during COVID, because of the virus, spreading of virus, we do have to take care of ourselves. We humans, so what happens when there's uncertainty? We, as human beings, we like to have control. We like to have order in our life. We like to have certainty. But these days, things are uncertain due to COVID. And when that happens, we automatically feel stress. Stress is a normal reaction, though, you have to remember, when there is uncertainty or conflicting information. And then the important thing to remember is stress can also be a protective factor. You know why? It's like when you have a fever, it's a signal to check your physical health. So when you start feeling stress, you now realize that, there's something that I must do to take care of my mental health. So that's a kind of a trigger that's telling you, take care of your mental health. So it's not all negative about stress. It can be as a protective factor once you realize that stress happens because something's happening in your brain and you do need to take care of it. So when you feel stressed, calm down, relax, and as Lee was talking about all the different things that you can do to, when I was doing my the CA exam here, it's called the CPA, and we had to do 4 exams at a day. And I would sit on my desk and I was like, this is so stressful. I had to study all these things crammed into my mind, and I didn't know how I was going to do my exam. So I sat there and I started deep breathing, for 5 minutes before the exam came to my head. And it kind of calmed me down. When you take deep breaths and you kind of focus on your breathing, and all of you from India must know that, how the breathing of yoga calms you down. So even if you can't do it every day, whenever you can do it, whenever you're feeling stressed, I tend to do that a lot. Whenever I'm stressed, just close your eyes and try to focus on the breathing. Wherever you're sitting, it doesn't matter. It kind of brings your blood pressure down and it calms you down so you can think a little clearer. Worries during these times. Right now, it would be safe to say if not all of us are worried about COVID. Yes, we feel helpless, our mental health suffer. One may become irritable, sad, helpless, frustrated. This may be more pronounced among those who are already struggling with their mental well-being. They may become more depressed, and carrying out basic daily activities become difficult. So what can you do during these times? Try to focus on things you can control, stay connected, and reach out if you need support. When sequestered with family, try ways to find your space. If possible, get some exercise. And I'll tell you what this whole thing is about control. Right now we cannot control COVID. So what can we control? So if instead of trying to focus on what can I do, I lost my job, yeah, you go and look for a job if you can find a job, or do the things that you can, that's in your control, like wash your hands, wear a mask, put limits on news, social media. There was a huge news on the cruise ship in the US in the beginning. It doesn't help me to know what the heck was going on in that cruise ship. So do I need to know that? Because it does not impact me immediately. So, those negative thoughts will come to my mind. So you try to limit that, because there's so much information coming to us. And it's so important. Try to focus on things you can control, and try to stay away from things you cannot control. It's not easy, but if you practice it, like, okay, I cannot control what COVID is going to do, but I can control what, like basic taking care of things, washing hands, making sure when I go out that I wear a mask, stay in the present. And I think Lee alluded to all of that. Rest, eat healthy, try to do these basic things, the basic day-to-day activity, staying connected, and reach out if you need support. We are confined to the home, we are restricted, we can't go out, but you can call your friends, you can call your family, talk to them. Loneliness can make one depressed. We are social beings. You have to remember, we are all very social beings, and we want to stay connected. So try ways to stay connected. And in India, it was even harder during those times, because everyone's so used to going to their neighbors, knocking, going out, and we have had so many people come to our support group because they're so stressed. A lot of people have lost their jobs, a lot of people, their means of, feeding their family, all that is happening. There's a lot of loneliness, there's a lot of depression going on. And you want to take care of that. So try to talk to people, try to do the best, like try to control the spot aspect of it, to do the best you can in these situations. Interaction. So this is something, that we found is spouses. You're confined to a space, and young people have told us, in Dharavi, if anyone knows Mumbai, we had a workshop during COVID, and they were like, we are confined to this little space and with parents, and the parents are nagging us and all that going on. There's also a lot of problems going on with spouses. So what do? There's a lot, when you're day and night in the same little space, you don't have a lot of room in your house. You can't go, even when you have room in the house, you might not be able to stay away because you don't have the outlets you had, the friends you went to, or the family you visited where you had outlets. Here you don't. So what do? You get into arguments. And when you get into arguments, what happens is your heart rate goes up. And they say, psychologists say that if it goes up over 100, then there's a tendency your brain is not thinking clearly. So in those instances, take a deep breath and come back to the conversation, whatever you were having an argument with, but go out of that conversation. Tell your spouse that, can we now take a little break? I need to kind of think about it, and go stay calm, stay away for half an hour, 2 hours. Tell them you'll come back to the conversation, and maybe you'll see each other's point of view much better, much clearer, because when your heart rate is up, you cannot think very clearly. And it's so important. Sometimes, you want to say something, and they say, count to 10 before you say something nasty. And, before you react to someone's statement or something where you're not happy about it. So taking a break, and this is very, very critical, because a lot of these things have been happening with spouses. You want to stay calm. You'll probably see things differently and clearer. One of the person was saying, that was getting irritable because she found that her husband's family was always the one being centered in this. And then when she came back to the conversation after a while, she saw that was not true. It just happened that her family was very close by, the next door. So naturally, her husband's family was in another place. And, naturally, he was more worried about them. So, things become a little clearer when you calm yourself down and think about things. Why is this happening? Because that argument is not going to go anywhere. It's going to start into a fight, and it's going to just get aggravated. So you want to stay away from that. And then for me, exercise works wonders. There was an article I think it was 1990, I read in the Washington Post, and that was amazing, about a lady who had written how no medicine when she was growing up would help her, but the only way she was able to overcome her mental health was through running, and she had to do a lot of long distance running. It was a wonderful article. So what happens when you exercise? It's just so important. And in India, what was happening during COVID, I know that people were not even allowed to go out, and you were confined. One time I talked to my nephew, and he said we can only go to the grocery store. So he was a big exercise, not big, but he ran a few miles every day, a few kilometers. So he said I would take my bag for shopping and pretend, and then I would come back, and then so that the cops won't catch me like I'm going out to exercise. So what it does, it releases endorphins. And these hormones act as a stimulants, and you feel happy and relaxed. It's not a stroll in the park, which is okay if you can't do more exercise, but at least get your heart rate up. Whatever you can do, go outside, get some exercise. Stress management. So exercise can control stress and boost the body's ability to deal with existing mental tension. It also increases concentrations of a chemical in the brain that can help respond to stress better. So, stress management, it's good. Sunshine. When you go, you must have heard a lot in India. I know that when my kids were here, I used to put them out in the sun with some oil on their body to get vitamin D. So, and then what does vitamin D do to you? It lessens your likelihood of experiencing depressive symptoms. So going out, getting some sunlight is really good for you. Prevention of cognitive decline. They don't say that it's going to cure Alzheimer's, but then it boosts the brain's ability to minimize and slow cognitive decline. It improves memory and learning. So that's kind of important to remember that it does that. A calmer state of mind. So whenever I go out and I run a couple of miles, I did that this morning, and before we had the session start, what it does is it releases hormones before and after, and you experience you're much calmer. You're experiencing anxiety, you start feeling calmer. Whether you're hopping, you can go on a treadmill, track, trail, sidewalk. When I go in Mumbai, I know the roads are bad, but I still go early in the morning when there's nobody around, except, people on the streets. And, I chat with them even, and it was good to go out and get my exercise in. It increases productivity, feeling unmotivated. The solution might be just a quick exercise. Research shows that workers who take time for exercise on a regular basis are more productive and have more energy than their peers who are less active. And that is so true because, sometimes I wonder, a friend of mine, she runs almost like 51 kilometers. You'll be amazed if you see one of the person who's one of my ambassadors for my virtual run, Adeline. And after that, she's a nurse, a cancer nurse. And after that, she goes to work. So can you imagine, like every few days I see her doing that. So it gives you much more energy and, your blood, it does a lot of things for you. And last and not the least, it gives you better sleep. For even moderate exercise can help you sleep better. It's like, the other day someone was saying, oh, there was a big storm, or I had to go for physical therapy because I had injured my leg a little bit from running. And the physical therapist said, did you hear the storm last night? I had to wake my husband. I said, no, I didn't. And I was like laughing because I said, I'm like your husband. I just slept through all that storm. So if anyone has questions, this is the link to the online course. You can take the online course. It's very informative and it's a voiceover, so you can listen to it. And there's a virtual race we are doing. And if Nandini, if you want to share with people, it's a virtual race for suicide awareness that we are doing. It's in September. And if anyone wants to support and join us, it would be great. I'd really appreciate that, because we are all volunteers here, and everything that we do is basically to help other people. And with all these workshops to support the programs in India, all the proceeds go to support the programs in India. So we are all volunteers. Even though I founded it, we're all volunteers. Other than that, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask me. But thank you very much for for listening to this story.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, that you have presented a wonderful session. Like your emotions are the slaves to your thoughts, and you are slaves to your emotions. Like that. And we all know that there is a well-known emotional intelligence. People are there who explain emotional intelligence and emotional stability and coping strategies during this whole COVID-19. I would like to thank all of you to give us your valuable time and give us a wonderful session today. I would like to request Mr. Matt Perelstein to come over and give a conclusion session so that we can conclude our meeting. Over to you, sir.
Okay, well, that was very informative. Thank you very much to everyone. Really good information. We went a little long and everybody's stuck in there and listened and paid attention. I like that. There was good energy of people in the chat. I was trying to copy it, but you can't copy the whole thing and paste it, but it was a lot of chat. Very good. So I'm hoping if you post in there about the YouTube live, I think Dr. Khalid already put it in there, but if you could post that again, maybe post the our contact information, maybe post where to get additional information, Lee's book, Shanti's book, Gatri's nonprofit, my nonprofit, etc. It might be helpful to have people give more information. Yeah, there you go. Good idea, Shanti. All right. Very good stuff. Thank you all for joining us. I very much enjoyed myself. It's nice to be able to put all that information together and have so much more. All of us have so much more. We're like, oh, we got to stop because all of us have so much information. EQ is pretty simple, but there's so much to it. Once you get into it, there's so much to it. And we wanted to go on and on and on, but we can't. So, so read on, learn on, please enhance your emotional intelligence so that you can have the life that you want to live. So good luck to you all. Stay in touch. Thank you, Nandini.
Thank you.
Hello, Nandini.
Right. Oh, that's
Hello?
helpful.
Hello, Nandini. Hello.
She's
we can
on
hear you. There you
mute.
go. We can hear you, Dr. Clay, but very low.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Am I
Go ahead.
audible?
Yeah, audible. And go ahead and conclude the session, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. We are live on YouTube and link is already given to you. And here we have all the contact details of our speaker, that is Dr. M.A. Khalid, Mr. Matt Perelstein, Dr. Stephen W. Oliver, Dr. Shanti Jones, Lee Garrett, and Gayatri Datta. I thank all of you for your support and your time. I would like to convey my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to our chief guest, Dr. Khalid sir, and esteemed speaker. They take their time behind their busy schedule. They give us time and all the knowledge to us and make this session wonderful. Thank you to all once again. With this word, I would like to conclude this meeting. Stay healthy, stay safe. Hope we will meet soon. Thank you to all.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Okay,
Matt.
bye. Thank you so much, Nandini and everyone else.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Okay, Matt, thank you. We'll have chat later.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a lot of things to do, all board